Hi, my name is Rick Belliveau and I'm with Highland Home Inspections, and I want to talk to the realtors in the area that we serve, Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area, about mold. We're doing more and more mold testing, and you may or may not have been involved in it, but I'm coming across more and more realtors for whom this is the first time they've ever done it. And I'll give you my take on mold in a nutshell. It can be complicated, but there's a sense in which it's pretty simple, and it's good to think it through before you get into the process of advising your client on what to do. So say you're on a home inspection and the house is very, very clean. You go to the basement, we don't see any moisture infiltration. We don't get any high readings on the moisture meter. It doesn't smell musty. Your client may want to do a mold test, just either because they're hypersensitive or they're very nervous about mold. They may want to do a mold test. Think of another house you go into and it smells musty, or we see moisture stains on the wall. We get high readings with a moisture meter, or you even see mold. It's fairly common to actually see the mold. People will want to do a mold test in that case oftentimes too. So, when do you do mold testing, and what happens when you do that? If we do a mold test in any house, I can guarantee you that it will come back from the laboratory with at least a listing of 10 to 12 mold species that are in the house, because mold is naturally occurring. You cannot have a house without mold in it. So what they do is they take the air sample from the inside and we compare the air sample from the outside. Since most molds that are in the house come from the outside, if they're comparable, then that would indicate that there's nothing unusual going on in the house. But if they're different, if the inside sample is significantly higher for some species, then that would indicate that there's something inside the house that is creating unusual amounts of mold. Then what do you do? Well, if you see the mold, that's fine, because then you can deal with it. You get rid of the mold. So that begs the question, well, why did we do the mold test if in the end we're just going to get rid of the mold anyway? Well, that's a good question. There's a certain sense in which you really don't need a mold test unless you want to know what is in the air you're breathing or what kind of mold that is. Here's the difficult situation. This is the most challenging one that I've seen. You go into a house, the first one I described, it's very clean, no musty basement, no mold visible, no elevated moisture meter readings, and yet the buyer wants to do a mold test because maybe they have a hyperallergenic child, or somebody who's very sensitive, or they're just nervous. So they do a mold test and it comes back high. Now what do you do? Where's the mold coming from? The mold's high, but you don't know where it's coming from, so you don't know what to do. Sometimes it's in the storage that people have down in the basement. Cardboard boxes are a very, very common source of mold. So sometimes just clearing out the basement, cleaning the carpet will take care of any elevated mold levels. But that's one of the most difficult scenarios that you can get into with mold testing, where it's a clean house but the mold test comes back elevated and you don't know what the source of the mold is. On another house where you can see the mold, or you have a good idea where it's coming from, that's easier to deal with because you can see it and you can deal with it. So that's a little bit about mold testing in a nutshell. There's a lot more to say, but I'm out of time, and call us if you have any questions about that, and we can go from there. Thanks for listening.